The Time Collectors. Kai Chen watched her father sell another month of his life. The time exchange center's sterile white walls couldn't mask the desperation in the air. Through the reinforced glass, she saw the technician attach the temporal extractor to her father's wrist, a delicate silver device that looked more like jewelry than the sophisticated chronometric technology it was. That's when she first saw it, a gossamer thread of golden light flowing from her father into the machine. No one else seemed to notice. She blinked hard, but the vision remained. Time itself, visible and tangible, being drained away. "It's only 6 months this time, Kai," her father said later, his smile tight. "It'll help pay for your mother's treatment." But Kai noticed how his hair had grayed at the temples, how his movements had slowed. He'd sold 5 years over the past 3 months. At this rate, he'd be dead before his actual time was up. What would you do if you could literally see someone's lifetime being drained away? How would you value time differently if it became a tangible resource? 3 years later, 17-year-old Kai had learned to control her strange ability. The threads of time appeared to her in different colors and intensities: bright gold for youth and vitality, deep amber for middle age, burgundy red for twilight years, sickly green for borrowed time, black for time that had been stolen. Living in the lower districts of New Shanghai, she saw more black and green threads than any other color. The poor sold their time to survive, while the wealthy hoarded years like dragons hoarding gold. Her mother had passed away despite their sacrifices. Her father, now looking twice his age, worked as a janitor in the upper district's time reserve bank. How does society change when life expectancy becomes directly tied to wealth? What new forms of discrimination might emerge? Kai was helping her father clean the bank when she saw him, Winston Chang, the notorious time broker who had convinced her father to sell those first crucial months. His thread was a blinding gold wrapped around him in luxuriant coils. He had centuries stored away. As he passed, Kai reached out instinctively. Her fingers brushed his thread, and suddenly she could grasp it. With a gentle tug, she pulled 3 years free. Chang didn't notice, but Kai watched in amazement as his thread dimmed slightly. The stolen time manifested as a glowing strand around her own wrist. That night, she visited Mrs. Liu, her elderly neighbor dying of temporal debt. With another touch, Kai transferred 2 of the stolen years to her. The next morning, Mrs. Liu's gray hair had traces of black. Her arthritis had vanished. Is it ethical to steal from those who have taken unfair advantage of others? Does returning stolen resources to their original community justify theft? Kai developed rules for her time theft. 1. Only steal from those who had more than a century in surplus. 2. Never take more than 5 years at once. 3. Distribute the time within 24 hours. 4. Never keep more than a year for her family. But she began noticing strange effects. When she gave 3 months to her friend Ming, his college entrance exam scores improved dramatically. When she gave a year to the old street musician, he not only grew younger, but began composing original music for the first time. The time wasn't just extending lives, it was expanding potential. How might access to more time change someone's fundamental nature? Would you become a different person if you knew you had centuries to live? The authorities couldn't see the threads, but they noticed the pattern. Rich clients were mysteriously losing small amounts of time, while the poor were living longer, achieving more, defying their prescribed social roles. The Time Regulation Authority deployed hunters, agents with advanced chronometric sensors. They couldn't see the threads like Kai, but they could detect temporal anomalies. During one close escape, Kai discovered another ability. She could see how the threads connected people, forming a vast tapestry of cause and effect, past and future. What responsibilities come with the ability to see how people's lives interconnect? How would you handle knowing the ripple effects of your actions? Kai wasn't alone. She found others who could see the threads. Jin, an old man who could freeze time but never change it. Maya, a doctor who could see how time affected health. River, a child who could predict where temporal shifts would occur. They called themselves Chroniclers, and they had been working in secret for decades. But they warned her. Every piece of stolen time created ripples. The wealthy weren't just hoarding years, they were hoarding possibilities. Redistributing time meant redistributing destiny. Would you join a secret organization fighting temporal inequality? What risks would be worth taking? Everything changed when Kai stole a decade from Marcus Chen, the inventor of time extraction technology. Within hours, a struggling artist he had ignored became a celebrated painter. His abandoned son became a community leader. His exploited workers started successful businesses, but as their timelines expanded, his contracted. His innovations began to unravel. The entire technology of time extraction began to fade from history. Can changing the past through temporal manipulation be justified if it creates a better future? What if it erases beneficial innovations along with harmful ones? The Time Regulation Authority traced the temporal cascade to Kai. They gave her 3 options. 1. Surrender and reverse all her temporal redistributions. 2. Keep stealing time until the system collapses. 3. Work with them to create a new way of managing humanity's time. But the Chroniclers showed her a 4th option. The threads could be rewoven, not just redistributed. The entire system could be transformed. Which would you choose? Is it better to work within a broken system to improve it gradually, or risk everything for revolutionary change? Kai gathered all the Chroniclers. Together, they could see the entire temporal tapestry of human existence. Every life was connected, every moment precious. They began the great reweaving, untangling threads of inequality, strengthening bonds between communities, creating new patterns of possibility. The process would take years, but it had already begun. Time was becoming not a commodity to be bought and sold, but a gift to be shared. 20 years later, Kai sits with her father in their garden. His thread glows with natural amber light, no longer drained, no longer artificial. Children play in the streets, their threads interweaving freely, creating patterns of possibility she never imagined possible. The time exchange centers have become timeshare hubs, where people voluntarily pool their excess time to help those in need. The rigid hierarchy of temporal wealth has dissolved into a fluid network of mutual support. She still sees the threads, but now they tell a different story, not of theft and hoarding, but of sharing and growth. Time has become not a finite resource to be depleted, but an infinite potential to be realized together. The true value of time lies not in its quantity, but in how it connects us to others. When we see time as a shared resource rather than a personal possession, we can weave a future that enriches everyone's story. In conclusion, I would like to pose a few questions for discussion, and I look forward to reading your answers in the comments. 1. How do our choices about time affect not just ourselves, but our entire community? 2. Is immortality through time hoarding less valuable than a shorter life lived with purpose? 3. What would society look like if time truly became a shared resource? 4. How does our perception of time shape who we become? 5. Can systemic inequality be addressed through individual actions, or does it require collective transformation? 6. What responsibilities come with the ability to see and change the thread of time? 7. How do we balance personal need against community welfare when resources are limited?